tonight.
We've taken a historic first step to repeal and replace Obamacare and finally give the American people the kind of health care they deserve.
A deal creating safe zones in Syria was signed today between Turkey, representing Syrian rebels, and regime backers Iran and Russia. It calls for 4 areas across the country to be surrounded by checkpoints. The Syrian opposition, unhappy with the deal, stormed out of the peace negotiations. Iraqi forces have opened a new front in the grueling 7-month-long battle to recapture Mosul from the Islamic State. Iraqi troops led an attack that cornered fighters in the city's west. The offensive, backed by U.S. airstrikes, had slowed in recent weeks, but hundreds of thousands of civilians remain trapped. Hungarian prosecutors have charged 11 people in the deaths of 71 migrants who suffocated in the back of a truck traveling to Germany in 2015. 4 of the men are charged with murder, and all with human smuggling. Texas is outlawing sanctuary cities. Republican Governor Greg Abbott tweeted that he was getting his signing pen warmed up after the Senate passed the bill. Critics say it'll encourage racial profiling since it allows police to ask anyone they detain about their immigration status. President Trump signed a controversial executive order today that paves the way for churches and other tax-exempt religious groups to get directly involved in political campaigns with endorsements and contributions.
For too long, the federal government has used the power of the state as a weapon against people of faith.
The order, signed on the National Day of Prayer, also makes it easier for religious organizations to deny contraception services to employees.
That's the group. This is a great plan. I actually think it will get even better. And this is, make no mistake, this is a repeal and a replace of Obamacare. Make no mistake about it.
Well, it passed. And by it, I mean the demon bill from legislative hell that nobody wanted to put their fingerprints on. It has now departed the House of Representatives. And Democrats and Republicans are celebrating just about the same amount. That singing, that's Democrats trolling Republicans because they say that today they just put a lot of their seats in jeopardy.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
The vote today was a victory for the GOP in one narrowly defined way. They can say they passed something and that health care is no longer their problem for a little while. But the way it passed, by one vote, is electoral gold for Democrats. In the unlikely event this becomes law and people don't love it, every Democrat running for office can say his or her opponent was the one vote that made it happen. So not surprisingly, Republicans are trying to spin this thing.
Today we start the process of rescuing the American people from the failures of Obamacare.
The bill does have some stuff that Republicans have wanted to do for a long while.
The American Health Care Act will repeal the individual and employer mandates. It will repeal Obamacare taxes. It will repeal Obamacare rules. It will repeal Obamacare subsidies. And it will do what is right by stopping taxpayer funding for abortion providers and by refocusing Medicaid on those who most need it. And we replace all of that with a system that protects those with pre-existing conditions.
That last part, about pre-existing conditions, that's a big part about why this bill was so hard to pass. Republicans have been scrambling to try to keep this expectation of pre-existing conditions intact. In effect, trying to be able to say that they repealed Obamacare while actually keeping the parts of Obamacare everyone likes. The bill now goes to the Senate, where it's expected to face some very tough sledding. A lot of Republicans and Democrats don't expect the Senate to even take this bill up in its current form.
You're walking the plank for what? A bill that will not be accepted by the United States Senate. Why are you doing this?
The fight over pre-existing conditions is primarily about the individual market. which serves the roughly 8% of Americans who don't get insurance from their job or Medicare and Medicaid. Before Obamacare went into effect in 2014, insurers in 45 states kept lists of medical conditions that would automatically disqualify a potential buyer from getting coverage. These were common conditions that anyone might experience, like cancer, sleep apnea, heart problems, obesity, mental disorders, HIV. Insurers could deny you coverage if you were pregnant or trans. Obamacare forced insurers to cover all applicants, and it banned them from charging sick people more. The new bill lets states opt out of that second protection, meaning that insurers in those states can jack up rates for people with pre-existing conditions. To offset that, the new bill provides money, now $138 billion, that can go to funding high-risk pools, discrete coverage groups for sicker customers where government subsidies would offset the higher costs. The problem is, that's probably not enough money to make high-risk pools work. And in the states that tried out the pool model before Obamacare, there was another hitch. The pools still excluded coverage for customers' pre-existing conditions, meaning they had to pay out of pocket, just like they did in the first place. On Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will release the new jobs report. And economists are hoping for an improvement on the dismal 98,000 jobs added to the economy in March. But many of those new jobs will be subsistence-level service roles or unstable jobs that can't promise the security Americans are looking for. Though the companies that offer those positions are hiring.
Going to job fairs, people realize we hire, we're not just for gambling, we're here to give people jobs as well. We have 4 professional positions we're hiring for and looks like 7 entry level. Most of them don't require much experience, 18 years old, some don't require a high school diploma or GED.
Are job fairs really necessary in the internet age?
Yes, just to get our name out, just as an option to look for when they're applying.
What positions do you have?
We have a remote support engineer, which is basically you're sitting in cubicles, you're answering phones, you're logging into servers, network switching.
The hardest part about not having a job is the way it makes me feel about myself. Like I'm not doing a job that a man should, as far as taking care of my family,
So we can educate you while you're here. Okay, cool.
Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Ben.
Whenever I graduated high school, I started building houses, and then the housing market crashed. And then I got into the oil field. It was better money for a while, but then it crashes. And then you're unemployed for a while, but then you get back to it, and you start making good money again, and then it crashes again. So that's how I ended up here. I'm kind of ready to get out of that cycle and find something more stable and long-term.
We have 60 companies represented here today, and we have approximately 300 job seekers right now. May get more, hopefully up to 400.
I was wondering if y'all had any job opportunities for people that are 18 to 21. I've been doing a job search for probably about 6 months now, and I have applied to over 100 places and still haven't found a job. If I can get 28 hours a week, even if it's at minimum wage, I think it'll cover enough bills that I can not break into my loans too bad. Right now I'm living off of loans. I have about $3,000 in loans at 18, so that gets hard.
So that's my contact information as well as how to apply.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I've gone around today, every single person that I've talked to, they're offering jobs online now, which I think is really cool because it's allowing us to have more access to jobs, but at the same time it is a job fair. I'm here to find a job today, and so that's made it hard.
I have sent out a rough estimate, 250 resumes since the beginning of January, and have had 5 interviews, 5 face-to-face interviews, which I think that's not a very good law of average,
You have my business card as well.
So I just keep plugging away, and I keep doing things like this, coming to job fairs, where you at least have a face-to-face contact. Well, I can always use an extra toothbrush and a toothpaste.
What kind of job are you looking for?
I'm actually a certified medical assistant, but I have done bookkeeping and payroll, that sort of thing, because the medical assisting in Shawnee, the pay is so low. Yeah. I have a big concern because of my age. I'm an older person. Most people want to retire in 10 years from my age right now. I don't plan on retiring. I plan on working until I can't work anymore.
The final round of the French presidential election is just 3 days away, and Marine Le Pen is now polling at over 40%. Her hardline nationalist message has people on edge in the banlieue, the poor suburbs outside Paris home to millions of first and second generation immigrants. These communities already have a tense relationship with the French authorities, and sometimes riot in response to police brutality. They think it would worsen under a President Le Pen.
Vous savez que nous attachons une importance toute particulière dans notre projet présidentiel à réarmer la police, pas seulement d'ailleurs sur le plan matériel, mais également en effectif.
Voter turnout in these areas is substantially lower than the rest of France. The question is whether the Le Pen threat will drive the banlieue to the polling booths or onto the streets.
J'étais tranquillement à la maison. Quand j'entends un gros bruit, je me dirige vers le salon. Je vois qu'il y a des policiers, ils m'ont attrapé comme ça. Je leur ai dit, allez, on embarque celui-là. Puis ils étaient faciles, dizaine, quinzaine. J'ai résisté un peu, ils se sont tous rués sur moi. Là, on a su me maîtriser, on m'a mis les menottes, on a commencé à me frapper, et des coups, et des coups, et des coups, et des coups. Et à un moment, je suis même tombé dans les pommes. Tombé dans les pommes, il m'a mis un deuxième coup, et là, à ce moment-là, je me suis réveillé. C'était très, très violent. C'était une épreuve très difficile pour moi et pour toute ma famille. Et pour tout le quartier aussi.
Abdoulaye Fofana is well known in Clichy-Montfermeil. When he was violently assaulted by police in his home in 2008, the assault was caught on film. The officers were prosecuted, and Abdoulaye was released without charge. But almost a decade later, policing in the banlieue can still be extremely violent. In February, a man known as Theo was raped by police during a raid, sparking riots across Paris.
Les contrôles, tout le temps. Ouais, tout le temps. Limite, dans les contrôles, on se sent agressé.
Nous, on peut être posé comme ça, et eux, ils ont envie de jouer avec nous, ils vont venir.
Do you think anything could change that dynamic between you guys and the police?
Comment ils sont partis, c'est de pire en pire.
C'est de pire en pire, ouais, en fait. C'est de pire en pire.
What would worse look like?
Demain, tu vas te réveiller, tu vas voir la police devant chez toi.
Pour moi, il n'y a pas plus pire. Ils arrivent à faire des déchirures de 10 cm avec des matraques dans le cul aux gens. Déjà, sans Marine Le Pen, ils arrivent à se faire relaxer. Alors avec Marine Le Pen, je crois qu'ils vont avoir une prime.
Il n'y aura plus de justice. Il n'y a pas de justice déjà.
Il n'y a pas de justice.
Abdoulaye is trying to use his standing with the community to try to convince people that voting is the best way to change things.
J'espère que les FN ne va pas passer. Elles ne nous considèrent pas comme des vrais Français. Et c'est pour ça que je vais encourager toutes les personnes qui sont autour de moi d'aller mettre ce petit bulletin dans l'urne. Parce que là, on est vraiment à un tournant dans l'histoire. Et là, il faut vraiment aller voter.
Politicians don't often come campaigning in Clichy. And those that have frequently fail to keep the promises they made here. Clichy's popular socialist mayor, Olivier Klein, believes François Hollande did a lot of damage with his broken promises. Ahead of the 2012 vote, Hollande had committed to introducing a policy that would require police to issue a receipt every time they stopped someone. The idea was to prevent kids in the banlieue being detained more than once in a day.
Le récépissé, c'était une mesure gagnant-gagnant, et pour les jeunes et pour la police. J'avais dit au ministre de l'Intérieur, j'avais dit au Premier ministre qu'à Clichy, on pouvait expérimenter cette mesure. On regarde, ça marche, ça ne marche pas, c'est trop compliqué, ben on essaye autre chose. La mise en œuvre de cette promesse électorale du récépissé, parce que malheureusement, les syndicats de police y étaient très opposés. Et quand on a l'impression que voter, ça sert à rien, que ça change pas notre vie, eh bien évidemment, le jour des élections, on reste chez soi.
Like a lot of people in Clichy, Loic Mbendi's parents aren't French citizens. He's worried that if Le Pen is elected, they'll be sent back to Congo, which they fled before he was born. He's trying to convince his best friend Idelson that the stakes are too high not to vote this time.
Peu importe qui est le président, ça ne change rien dans ma vie. Ça ne va rien changer. Et Obama, homme président noir, on croyait que tout allait être réglé. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? C'était même pire.
On va dire Marine Le Pen dépasse.
Ouais.
Le Pen, elle a dit quoi? Dès que je passe au pouvoir, je rapatrie les étrangers.
C'est long. Écoute, c'est long à faire.
Ok, c'est long.
C'est pas du jour au lendemain. Elle est élue. Écoute, paf, demain tous les immigrés dehors.
Le problème, c'est que quoi? C'est que le fait de changer les choses, la meilleure façon d'y arriver, entre guillemets, c'est la révolution. Dans toute l'histoire, on sait que la révolution, c'est de changer.
C'est ça. Moi, j'aime le chaos. S'il y a un truc qui se passe pas bien, faut que ça serait comme ça. De toute façon, il y a que comme ça, vraiment, qu'on écoute le vote.
Loic still went to vote in the first round, but the turnout in Clichy was 20% lower than the rest of France. A few days before the vote, a man from a nearby neighbourhood travelled to central Paris and opened fire on the Champs-Élysées. A policeman was killed.
Pour l'attaque terroriste qui a été faite sur les Champs-Élysées, comme par hasard, on est parti chercher des complices ou je sais pas si c'était la maison du terroriste, HL, juste à côté de la ville à même pas 5 minutes. Voilà, ce qui c'est assez dérangeant parce que dire que la gangrène vient de la banlieue et une personne va nous voir, elle va dire lui, il est susceptible de faire n'importe quoi et de tuer des gens. C'est quand même énorme.
What do you make of this figure that something like 50% of the police vote for Front National?
Je suis horrifié parce que s'ils veulent mettre en place cette politique de Le Pen et que c'est les forces de police qui mettent en place ces politiques, ça va mal se passer. Je pense que ça va exploser, je pense bien.
Analysts predicted the Champs-Élysées attack would provide a last-minute boost for Marine Le Pen.
Macron 23, Le Pen 21. Macron-Le Pen.
Le fait que Marine Le Pen soit au deuxième tour, c'est quand même un échec de la société, c'est un échec de la classe politique. Forcément, on est un peu triste ce soir.
Will you now be actively encouraging people to vote Macron?
Oui, bien sûr. Oui, sans aucun doute. Je ferai campagne activement pour battre Marine Le Pen et puis on verra.
At this point, Abdoulaye believes a vote not cast is a vote for the Front National.
Ceux qui votent pas, c'est donner de la force à l'extrême droite. Il ne faut pas que ça devienne comme aux États-Unis. Toutes les bavures policières ont tué des gens, etc. Ça risque de créer une guerre civile.
Do you have any doubt that it was Russia and Russian agents that perpetrated the hacks of the DNC and the Podesta emails and the misinformation campaign?
My best answer is it absolutely stretches credulity to think they were not involved.
When the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence tried to get to the bottom of whether or not Russia hacked the election, they called Kevin Mandia.
During this election, we saw Russia break rules of engagement they had traditionally followed.
A former Air Force officer who investigated cyber crimes against the United States. Mandia founded Mandiant, a cybersecurity firm he sold in 2013 to FireEye for $1 billion. He was made CEO of FireEye last year. The DNC hack, the Sony email hack, the Yahoo hack, the Target credit card hack, all have one thing in common.
This is your war command center?
They lead back to rooms like this.
So this is one of our 7 security operations centers. From here, we can reach into our customers' networks and reach any endpoint we want and ask the question, is this thing compromised or not?
When a company or government is hacked, FireEye tries to do 3 things. Close the door the hackers came through, figure out who broke in, and triage whatever the hackers have done.
When we do response to breaches, we usually work in war rooms, we call them, to figure out what happened. We'll have 10 or 12 folks sitting at computers quietly working. We have over 100 people that do what's called malware analysis. The ability to deep dive into the guts of a file to say, this is malware, it's bad, and here's all the things it does, to include even who may have authored it. Then we can bring any of our 250 threat analysts to bear an alert saying, hey, I've seen this before, And it's these three guys from St. Petersburg, and here's what they normally do.
Do you get to know different characters?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? No question about it. I mean, we even have nicknames for a lot of the hackers we respond to. We know there'll be nerdy things, but I mean, quite frankly, based on the malware. But the malware, we have hammer toss, things like Fluffy, Snuggle Duck, and all that kind of stuff.
Mandiant rose to prominence in 2013 when they uncovered how the Chinese government hacked into the Department of Defense. And more than 150 American companies, including Facebook, Apple, and the New York Times. Chinese hackers, calling themselves the Comment Crew, broke into the servers of several universities in the US and used the local IPs to send what looked like legitimate emails to employees at the companies. When an employee opened an attached Excel file with a hidden virus, it penetrated the local server, exposing the system to theft, change, and destruction.
We all have this sort of stereotype in our head of the teenager in a warehouse hacking. Are more people getting involved, or are these mostly military operations?
I think the majority of what we gather intelligence on happens to be state-sponsored or group-based. It's very rare that we see the lone actor.
He's noticed that, basically, as soon as a nation gets enough bandwidth, folks start trying to hack other countries.
Why are we seeing more attacks from the Middle East?
I think the Middle East, we're seeing more attacks there just because they're developing the capability.
Give me a sense of the scale of these attacks.
We've got companies getting 4 billion alerts a day in events. You're going to see spray and pray attacks in your network every single day, all the time.
Would FireEye do offense?
I don't think so. I think that you have to be very careful. If they decide to escalate in any way, their escalation could impact 1,000 other companies that have been compromised. And now you're impacting public policy and the relationship between sovereign nations in an unpredictable way. It just doesn't work to have the private sector do it, and it's a dangerous thing even to have the government do it.
That's Vice News Tonight for Thursday, May 4th. Tune in tomorrow night for the award-winning documentary series, Vice.
They're saying there are 6 IEDs laid on the road. He has training in EOD?
Get out, come on,
Oh, fuck.